Hi, this is Michelle with the Monadnock Center for History and Culture. Welcome to the first of our 10-minute tutorials. In this series, we will look at a variety of free online resources for researching local history in the Monadnock region. Research is one of the most fun parts of my job at the Monadnock Center, and I thought it would be fun to share what I've learned along the way. These tutorials will be helpful to family genealogists, folks interested in the history of their town, their house, or other properties, and also to teachers who might want to bring some local history into their classrooms. We will start with an overview of the Peterborough Transcript newspaper database. There will be two parts to this, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is go to the Peterborough Town Library website. Now, this is peterboroughtownlibrary.org is the address. The Peterborough Town Library has digitized the old microfilms that were made from the original newspapers and made those available online for free. So to get to them, you're going to go to this research tab up here on the upper left corner of the screen and select local history. Now, I've already preloaded the pages because lag times with loading would be very boring to sit here and wait for them to load. So we're just going to click through. Now, here we are on the local history page. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see new resource, and right under that, searchable online, and that's the link that's going to take you to the database. And this is where you'll land. So, Digital Archives of the Peterborough Town Library. Now, you can see that you can search here for words, you can limit it by date, and we're going to get into that sort of advanced search in part 2. But right now, we're going to just look at the newspapers themselves and a few things that you should know as you're working with these papers. So you can see here that you can browse by title, and the newspaper over the years has had a number of different names, starting out with the Peterborough Messenger in 1847, becomes the Untitled Transcript, and then later Peterborough Transcript, all the way up to today, where we know it as the Monadnock Ledger Transcript. Now, I'm going to take you to the very first issue of the Peterborough Messenger. This is October 15th, 1847. And when you are searching or browsing, this is exactly what you're going to get. It's a picture of that original paper. Now, because these were made from the microfilms, you are going to find that in some cases there are scratches and some places where things might not be completely legible. And that's from the microfilms. So, for example, right here, I'm pretty sure the original paper probably had been mended with a piece of tape. And when the microfilm was made, that's how it rendered. So, for the most part, they're very, very readable. And if you're having trouble reading them, sometimes zooming in will help to make them just a little bit, have a little bit more clarity. Now, these early papers oftentimes don't have a whole lot of local news. They publish things like stories. You can see there's a poem here. News from faraway places in New York, Boston, even Europe, California. And that's because this was the way people at this time were able to get that news from far away. But that's not to say there's nothing of interest in these early issues. Let me take you to another page from this very first issue. Now, this is page 3, and you can see that it's a real mix of things. We have a little bit about the railroads here, but then there's some foreign news, a little something about potato rot, which evidently was a big problem in 1847, but also advertisements that can give you a real picture of the community during a given time period, and then other local notices. Here's a notice for a meeting of the Lyceum, and here a large granite block is being erected. This is referring to the granite block in Peterborough that's at the corner of Main and Grove Street still today. And then there are other things, marriages, death notices, those sorts of things. So it's not that it's not usable, but you will find that there's a lot of content that doesn't relate to the local area. Now, as time moves on through the 19th century and into the 20th century, the newspaper becomes more and more locally oriented. And I'm going to show you here. This is a page from January 4th, 1900. And you can see right here, Dublin, Greenfield, Francistown. So it's not just things happening in Peterborough. And in fact, At this point, the newspaper had correspondents in each of the towns who would send in news to the paper. Here we have Temple, down here a little further, Bennington, and this contains a huge amount of information about the people and the places all around us in any given time period. Now, sometimes there's some really interesting stuff. It's about who's gone on vacation or who's not feeling good, but also a really beautiful write-up about this wedding in Dublin, which if that was your ancestor, I think you would really love to know all that detail. And so it is very, very useful. Now, which towns are we going to find things from? So it's not just Peterborough. And what I've found is that the greatest depth of coverage is in Peterborough, Hancock, Greenfield, Francistown, Bennington, Jaffrey, Dublin, Antrim, Temple, and Sharon. Not as frequently mentioned, but still there is content, are Lyndeborough, Wilton, Hillsborough, Rindge, Harrisville, Nelson, and Stoddard. So that's kind of the geographic area that you're going to find materials in these newspapers. Now let's go back to the first page, the place where you'll land when you get to the database. You can see that you can also browse by year, and this can also be sort of an interesting way to look at it, or perhaps you're looking at a certain time period and you want to get a feeling for that time period. Well, doing it by browsing by year is a great way to do that. Or maybe you just know about something that happened in a particular year and you want to read more about it. This right here just shows you what the holdings are at this point, and I am recording on April 14th, 2020. You can see that there's a little bit of a gap right here between 1990 and 2009. So just that time period is the only part that's still left to be done. And I'm sure that will be coming along. I know that it's in the library's process for each year to have more and more of these digitized and made available. So that is the overview. You know, this browsing, it can be really fun. It can really suck you in. But for research purposes, it's kind of a needle in a haystack approach. In the second part 2, I'm going to show you how to use those search functions to find exactly what you're looking for, to really be able to zero in, and how to clip the newspaper to save it for later. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.